So the question begs, why do women do this? Why do women betray their in-group? And how is the current situation different from those that preceded it? Well, in a word, enfranchisement. Women have been given the vote, and in a democratic society, they vote their biological imperative. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, recent genetic research has shown that before the modern era, 80% of women managed to reproduce while only 40% of men did. The obvious conclusion from this is that a few top men had access to multiple women while the bottom 60% of men had no mating prospects at all. Women clearly didn't mind sharing the top man with a dozen other women, ultimately deciding that being one of many women sharing a man who leads was still more preferable than having the undivided attention of a man who serves. Commenting on this, Roy Baumeister, a prominent social psychologist who teaches at Florida State University, had this to say. It would be shocking if these vastly different reproductive odds for men and women failed to produce some personality differences. He went on, for women the optimal thing to do is to go along with the crowd, be nice, play it safe. The odds are good that a man will come along and offer sex and you'll be able to have babies. All that matters is choosing the best offer. We're descended from women who played it safe. For men, the outlook was radically different. If you go along with the crowd and play it safe, the odds are you won't have children. Most men who ever lived did not have any descendants who are alive today. Their lines were dead ends. Hence, it was necessary to take chances, try new things, be creative, explore other possibilities. Many societies, including the West, long ago devised a simple plan to stop the inherent infighting that occurs because a large majority of men in the in-group don't have sexual access to women or the ability to reproduce legitimate children. The entire basis of Western society was the male agreement to keep only one woman in public so that every male has near equal chance at reproduction. It's for this reason that organized and advanced civilizations have always needed to agree on the equitable distribution of women so as to incentivize its men to produce and have a stake in the society's health and security. But this, like other cultural arrangements that held the West together for centuries, is breaking down and can be observed in something as basic as the fact there are no Western countries that are even at replacement levels in their birth rates. This again can be laid at the feet of loosening of sexual morality and the dating habits of young women. Colloquially called the 80-20 rule, what it basically means is that the vast majority, the 80%, are sexually pursuing the top 20% of men. This is highly damaging to the formation of monogamous couples and the successful formation of families, and the children that will be the next generation of any given country. And we'll be talking about this more later in the video, but if you're interested, see Google for more information on this. Also, one thing to understand is that female psychology has always been about adaptation. In our tribal past, if women of conquered tribes didn't submit to their new masters, they faced death along with their husbands, brothers, sons, fathers. Even today, many women seek out aggressive men, whether consciously or not, as it seems that this psychology has been ground into women after countless years of our species' evolution. That means criminals, gangsters, and mass murderers are always going to be more attractive to women than hard-working, honest men. They always have been, they always will be. Think of how many women throw themselves at drug dealers versus, for example, math teachers. Sexual attraction is based on this reality for many women, regardless of whether they admit it or not. And the feminization of men in the West, adhering to the repetitive and decades-long diatribe that vilifies anything and all things masculine, are no longer, for many women, attractive potential mates. Especially for women in their critical prime childhood-bearing years. But I do add, this may and does change for many with age. The culture of the sensitive man, the emotional man, the compassionate man is at odds with what women are biologically predisposed to desire. Young women, if they tell you the truth, are drawn to the scoundrel, not the impeccable gentleman with the perfectly manicured fingernails.
Afraid.
You're trembling.
I'm not trembling.
Because I'm a scoundrel. There aren't enough scoundrels in your life.
I happen to like nice men.
Nice man.
Very nice.
It's so much a part of women's psyche to want the scoundrel. that it's wrapped up in their very DNA. Just to get this out of the way, because I have a feeling it might show up in the comments, yes, I am aware that the vast majority of women, when raped, reach sexual climax or orgasm. However, from all the science that's been done, this is just basically a hardwired response. That if it does have an effect on women and their judgment, it must do so at a very subconscious or primal level. I also know that the number one sexual fantasy disclosed by women over and over again is rape fantasy, forced sex fantasy. But fantasy and reality are two different things. So I'm not really going to count this as a reason why women are so prone to consciously betray their in-group. The half-century-long experiment of women's liberation and political enfranchisement has ended in disaster for the West. When you begin to start connecting the dots, you realize that since women have been given the vote, the entire center of politics and thus Western society has shifted ever more to the left. Women have also used their political enfranchisement to further the cause of the aptly named women's liberation. Liberation socially, liberation financially, liberation from family, from motherhood, liberation from religious dogma, and most importantly, sexual liberation. Once women were given equal say in the sphere of politics, it was only a matter of time until our civilization was swept up by the event horizon of its own collapse. All kinds of studies have been done on this subject, as this one from Columbia University, and they all, without exception, note that as women become more, quote-unquote, emancipated, the decline of the family is further accelerated. And as the family disintegrates and women move politically further and further to the left in their voting, many then begin to use the government as a surrogate husband and provider. Women are thus even more liberated from their traditional roles within the family and society at large. In one of the most comprehensive studies of civilizational decline, J.D. Unwin postulates in his book, Sex and Culture, written in 1934, that the main driver for the rise of a civilization is the degree of chastity of the said civilization's women. Unwin, a British social anthropologist at Oxford and Cambridge universities, studied 86 different cultures through 5,000 years of history and found a positive correlation between the cultural achievement of a people and the sexual restraint they observed. Unwin's impetus for the project was to test the Freudian theory that civilizational progress was the product of repressed sexuality. He found that discipline in sexual matters appropriated social energy to more civilizational ends. It's very complicated, but for Unwin, the fabric of society was primarily sexual, and heterosexual monogamy was the optimal arrangement for the planning, building, protecting, and nurturing of the family. If enough heterosexual partners made a monogamous commitment, civilizational energy was directed toward promoting the finest societal foundation possible. Without exception, each civilization he studied allowed its success to alter its moral code. According to Unwin, after a nation becomes increasingly liberal with regards to its sexual morality, it loses its cohesion, its impetus, and its purpose. From a chaste moral code, societies gain what he called expansive energy, and this energy allowed these cultures to expand into other weaker cultures.